All right, this is it. Ito na ang kahuli-hulihan. I made a promise that we will finish the entire subject coverage. So here we are. You could have been doing anything else right now, but you're listening to this video lecture, and I appreciate that. So without further ado, let's get right on to it. This video lecture will cover 3 topics. First off, government procurement. Second, data privacy. And third, intellectual property law. So first and foremost, let us talk about Republic Act number 9184, governing the matter of government procurement. You know how the government acquires things. Merong mga ipinamimigay na mga ayuda, ang pamahalaan, the local government or DSWD. They go out there, nagpapamigay ng mga gulay, ng mga iba't ibang mga health-related stuff, alcohol, face masks, face shields, di kaya mga iba't iba pang mga bagay na makakatulong sa atin in order for us to be able to better brave through this pandemic. O hindi naman kaya ang mga local government units dati, before COVID, pagdating ng pasukan, especially in the public elementary schools, darating si mayor o di kaya mga ibang mga tao ng city or municipal government, may dala-dalang mga bag na puno na ng mga school supplies, may mga notebooks, may mga ballpen, may mga lapis. Yung mga bag na yan, no, mayroong mga mukha o di kaya pangalan or both, no, pangalan ng politiko, ng mayor, ng vice mayor, what have you. Pet project nila. Ipinamimigay yan sa lahat ng mga estudyante. Wow, you get a free bag, you get free school supplies the very first day of class. Have you ever wondered saan nanggaling yung mga gamit na yon? Nanggaling ba yun sa bulsa ng mga politiko? Of course not. All of these things are paid by taxpayers. Now, mayroong government building na medyo dilapidated. Hindi na maganda ang kondisyon niya, nagfe-flake off yung pintura. Pag pumasok ka sa CR, well, less than desirable, to put it kindly. I visited court buildings, mga hall of justice, na talaga naman. Now, I will not be naming any particular city, but in my almost 5 years of lawyering, I would like to think that I've gotten around. I have seen my fair share of courts. And you know, some courts are just better than others. On the other hand, meron talagang mga korte na hindi pinagpala. Na talagang yung kondisyon ng mga building nila, kondisyon ng mga opisina, ng washrooms, ng mga hagdan, leave much to be desired. Ngayon, sabihin natin, the local government o hindi kaya the Supreme Court, magsi-spearhead sila ng proyekto para i-renovate itong mga dilapidated na building na ito. I say the Supreme Court kasi it is the Supreme Court which has administrative jurisdiction over all lower courts, including syempre yung infrastructure ng mga korte na ito. Now, para mapaayos itong mga sira-sira, itong mga lumang mga building na ito, para ma-refurbishan sila ng bagong mga kagamitan, in order for these old buildings to be spanking brand new, in order for them to look way better than they are right now, kailangan nilang bumili ng equipment. They have to hire a contractor. Now, how do they do that? Is it just enough to, just look for a contractor? Kausapin? Hanap, usap, deal? Is it that easy? Not really. The government has to follow a specific procedure in order to go about these things. And that, my friends, in a nutshell, is government procurement. Now, what is the policy behind our law on procurement? That can be found in Section 2 of RA 9184. It is the declared policy of the state to promote the ideals of good governance in all its branches, departments, agencies, subdivisions, and instrumentalities, including government-owned and/or controlled corporations and local government units. Take note of the keywords here, good governance. It is an aspect of good governance that the government is doing well in procuring for the needs not only of the government itself, but ultimately of the people. So marka yan ng isang mabuting pamahalaan na alam ng gobyerno kung paano kukunin, kung paano bibilhin ang mga bagay na kinakailangan ng mamamayan. So it's not just a matter of knowing how to buy, how to secure services, but a matter of sound public policy. It all boils down to the betterment of the people. So merong altruistic spin ang ating procurement law. Now, of course, let's stop beating around the bush. Kailangan nating i-define yung central term dito. What is procurement anyway? Procurement is defined under Section 5 sub N of the law, no? It refers to the acquisition of goods, consulting services, and the contracting for infrastructure projects by the procuring entity. It also includes the lease of goods and real estates. So take note of the keywords here. Acquisition. Through procurement, the government acquires. It acquires what? Goods or consulting services. Next keyword, contracting. Through procurement, the government enters into contracts. For what? For infrastructure projects. Dito pumapasok yung sinasabi ko kanina. The government hires the services of a contractor. Itong contractor na ito yung gagawa ng bagong building, ito yung magre-renovate ng existing building and what have you. Last keyword, lease. So when the government leases an office, like my own office, the office I'm working in. I've been working dito sa government office na to for almost 5 years now. Magfa 5 years ako late August this year. This office leases 2 other buildings. So we have a main building and then meron kaming inuupahan na 2 building, isang building sa tabi ng main building namin and another building across the street kung saan ako nag-o-office. So the government, you know, despite all of the massive budget that the government has at its disposal, ang gobyerno ay nangungupahan din. Well, ultimately, baka mamaya isipin ninyo, ay, ano ba yan? Ang gobyerno nangungupahan? You know, it's a good thing when you think about it. The government supports local businesses. The government supports business people and entrepreneurs by participating in this aspect of business and commerce. Ang gobyerno ay nangungupahan din at dahil dito, sumusuporta ang gobyerno sa mga negosyante na nagpapaupa. What do you think of that? Diba? And therefore, when we say procurement, it might refer to the government entering into lease contracts, not only of real estate, but also the lease of goods. For example, merong event ang inyong local government unit. Sa event na ito, kinakailangan nilang umupa ng sound system, kailangan nilang umupa ng stage, kailangan nilang umupa ng floodlights. Ngayon, hindi naman ito bibilhin ng gobyerno panghabang buhay. Dahil hindi naman araw-araw may event. Kailangan lang for this night, ngayong gabi lang. Tapos isosoli na ulit. You get the idea? That is procurement. Now, another key term or key phrase that I have not underlined here, this term, procuring entity. So, the word procurement, this is an action word. It is something that somebody does. Ngayon, sino yung actor dito? Though of course, I'm referring to the government. I've been referring to the government as the entity which does the procurement. But in the language of Section 5 sub N, ang actor natin dito is the procuring entity. It is the procuring entity which performs the procurement. Now, what is a procuring entity? That is the next question. Procuring entity refers to any branch, department, office, agency, or instrumentality of the government. So yes, umikot lang tayo. By procuring entity, we refer to the government. We mean the government. So any government office, any department, any agency, any instrumentality, including yung mga state U natin, mga state colleges natin, government-owned and controlled corporations, LGUs, any instrumentality of the government which participates in the procurement of goods or of consulting services or of infrastructure projects. Yan ang procuring entity. So ngayon, alam na natin kung ano yung action. Alam na natin kung sino yung actor. Napasadahan na rin natin yung keywords kanina. Let us delve into them in more detail this time. So what are the subjects of procurement again? Goods, number 1. Infrastructure, number 2. And consulting or consultancy, number 3. So what are goods within the context of the procurement law? Makikita natin ang sagot sa section 5 sub H. Goods refer to all items, supplies, materials, and general support services. Of course, except consulting services and infrastructure projects which are covered by the other key terms. So kung ang isang government office ay nangangailangan ng 500 ballpoint pen para i-distribute sa kanyang mga tao, that government office has to procure those goods. So if it is an item, if it is a supply, if it is material, yan ay goods. It's that simple. Now, let us go to infrastructure projects. This time defined under section 5 sub K of the law. Infrastructure projects include the construction, improvement, rehabilitation, demolition, repair, restoration, or maintenance of roads and bridges, railways, airports, etc. So, construction projects of the government entered into, initiated by the government. Hindi lang yung pagtatayo ng bago, kundi yung pagpapaganda ng nandiyan na. At hindi lang din yung dalawang yon. Infrastructure projects also cover demolition. So hindi lamang pagbuo ng bago o pagpapaganda o pagsasaayos ng nariyan na, kundi pagsira. All right? Lahat yan within the ambit of infrastructure project. Now finally, consulting services. By consulting services as defined under section 5 sub F of the law, we mean services for infrastructure projects and other types of projects or activities that require adequate external technical and professional expertise that are beyond the capability and or capacity of the government to undertake. For example, merong government office na nagtayo in compliance with existing laws ng Gender Sensitivity Committee. Committee Against Workplace Discrimination. Ang problema, wala sa existing staff ng government office ang mayroong training on workplace discrimination. Walang training on how to respond to a government employee's psychological woes. Hindi alam kung paano mag-handle ng case where a government employee complains of sexual harassment by a boss or by a peer or by somebody at work, kahit na sino man, mapababae o lalaki, or anybody in between. Walang training, walang competence. Now, how do you cure that lack of competence? The government agency or the government office here should hire the services of a consultant, of an expert in workplace discrimination, in gender sensitivity, to teach this newly formed committee. Magko-conduct ng seminar. Now, yung know-how nitong speaker or speakers na mga to, these are matters that are clearly beyond the capability of anybody in this government office I am speaking of in this example. The subject matter is technical in nature. Because workplace harassment, it delves into something psychological. It's not as easy as, sabihin mo dun sa tao na wag ka na muna pumasok while we are resolving this case. It's not as easy as that. Baka yung biktima, kailangan niya na magre-reassure sa kanya that everything will be all right. Baka hindi basta-basta ordinaryong intervention ang kailangan niya. Baka kailangan niya ng psychiatric help. Now, this newly formed committee, they have to know the difference at the very least. They have to determine if they need to refer the victim to DSWD. Dapat ba nilang i-refer sa women's desk? Kinakailangan ba nilang magtawag ng psychiatrist para maobserbahan yung biktima? Or is it sufficient na, that the victim be given time and the opportunity to vent? Kailangan lang ba niya kausap in order for him or her to feel better? Diyan papasok ang consulting services. Now, we know who the actor in procurement is. We know what procurement entails. And we also know the subjects of procurement. Now, of course, government procurement follows some core guiding principles. Isa-isahin natin. Of course, the intention is that the procurement process be transparent. Kagaya nga ng sinabi natin kanina, there is a good governance aspect to government procurement. And how can we prove that government procurement is an act of a good government if the proceedings aren't transparent? Kailangang merong oportunidad ang publiko na masubaybayan o masundan ang nangyayari sa procurement. Kaya naman, ang mga government offices, nire-require sila na mag-post ng mga bid bulletin, ng mga bid invitations, ng mga resolutions informing the public na ito yung nanalong contractor o nanalong bidder dito sa project na ito. Ang project na ito ay mayroong ganitong budget. At ang project na ito yung gagawin. Lahat yan pinopost sa mga website ng mga government offices because everything has to be transparent. Now, aside from transparency, we also need to deal with competitiveness. As we will be studying later on, the general rule in government procurement is competitive bidding. Now, competitiveness entails extending equal opportunity to enable private contracting parties who are eligible and qualified to participate in public bidding. Alam niyo yung quote sa Godzilla, diba? Let them fight So ngayon, iniimbitahan ng government office, for example, there is a particular project, no? Kukuha, no, mag-assess, secure ng security services itong government agency na to for this following year. So sabihin natin, for the year 2023, kailangan itong government office na to ng bagong complement ng security guards. So ngayon, iniimbitahan namin ng lahat ng interesadong security agency. Submit your bids to us. Ito yung budget para sa project. Ito yung terms na gusto naming sundin ng mananalong bidder. Now, if you think you are up to the challenge, submit your bids to us. If you think you are qualified, if you think you have everything that we need, submit your bids to us. And then we will see, may the best bidder win. So that's competitiveness. It is encouraged in procurement. Now, of course, another guiding principle here is the need for a streamlined procurement process. Merong specific na timeline na sinusunod ang government procurement. Malinaw yan sa batas sa RA 9184, malinaw yan doon sa implementing rules and regulations ng RA 9184. There is a process na dapat sinusunod. There should be no deviation from this process. Kasi malinaw naman, there is a straight line more or less na kailangang sundin ng government agency. There is what we call a pre-procurement, kung saan nagbe-brainstorm ang Bids and Awards Committee, the technical working groups, no, with regard to this project. Fina-finalize what are the terms of the project, of this procurement project. Once na ma-finalize na yan, let us invite interested bidders. The terms of reference are posted online for everybody to see. Magkakaroon ng tinatawag natin na pre-bid conference na a-attendan ng mga interested bidders. Now, the interested bidders will voice out their concerns, their questions. For example, ano po ba ang ibig sabihin ng clause na to dito sa terms of reference? Kailangan po ba ganito talaga to? Ito po ba talaga ang hinihingi or nire-require ng opisina ninyo? Now, the Bids and Awards Committee will clarify. The technical working group or groups will also clarify. Sasagutin nila lahat ng mga concerns. Now, if there is something that needs to be changed doon sa terms of reference, mag-i-issue ang Bids and Awards Committee ang back ng bid bulletin or mga supplemental bid bulletins. Now, if everything goes well at malinaw sa lahat ng mga umattend, ng mga interested bidders kung ano ang hinihingi ng government office na to for this procurement project, ang susunod na dyan ay yung bid submission. Submission and opening of bids. Hanggang sa isang partikular na oras lamang at petsa. Kapag nagpasa ka after that time, hindi natatanggapin. Ngayon, naipasa na lahat ng mga bids, magsiset ng isang public meeting, mag-iimbita ng mga taga-commission on audit, all interested persons, of course, the bidders, kailangan nilang makita yon. The bids will then be open. Mga selyadong bids yan. Bubuksan for the very first time doon sa bid opening. Titignan kung compliant yung mga bids doon sa technical and financial aspects ng project. So, technical, no? Naipasa ba nila yung kanilang complete documentation? Yung tinatawag nating PhilJEPS registration, kung meron ba silang mayor's permit or whatnot. Lahat ng mga hinihingi ng 9184, na-submit ba nila? Okay, kung na-submit nila, they are compliant. Ngayon, tignan na natin yung financial bid. Swak ba dun sa budget? We will be talking about that later on, no, in more detail. So sabihin natin, swak din sa budget. If okay dun sa financial bid, kung okay din dun sa technical bid, we have a winning bidder. Ngayon, hindi ibig sabihin na nanalo na siya, sa kanya na i-award. Because the streamlined procurement process dictates that there should be what we call a post-qualification. Ngayon na aralin na ng technical working group kung compliant ba talaga itong winning bidder doon sa terms na ini-impose ng opisina for this particular project. Kaya ba nilang mag-comply talaga? Bubusisiin yan ng technical working group. Then the technical working group will submit its recommendation to the Bids and Awards Committee. Sasabihin na okay, pumasa sa post-qualification or post-qual for short. Pag inaral naman ng back yan, sasabihin ng back, oo nga, it all checks out. Pumasa sa post-qual, therefore let us recommend to the head of the procuring entity na i-award yung contract, i-award yung project dito sa winning bidder. It is only at that point in time na pwede nang mag-issue yung head of the procuring entity, basically the head of the office or the head of the agency. Dito pa lang sa punto na to, mag-a-award nung kontrata dito sa winning bidder. After that pa lang, mag-uumpisa yung project. Contract implementation. So there is a process. Relatively easy to remember. And it has to be streamlined. Walang kuskus, balungos. Walang kung ano-anong kalokohan na nagaganap on the side. Just one straight line. All right? Next guiding principle, system of accountability. Mahalaga ito, considering that, of course, the policy, the goal of the government here is to make use of procurement, to utilize the procurement process as a good governance initiative. There has to be a system of accountability where both the public officials directly or indirectly involved in the procurement process as well as in the implementation of procurement contracts and the private parties that deal with government are, when warranted by the circumstances, investigated and held liable. So kapag merong kalokohang naganap down the line dito sa procurement process, asahan ninyo that whoever is behind these shenanigans will be held liable accordingly. Because crime does not pay, especially in government procurement. Now finally, last guiding principle here that we should take into account is public monitoring. There are government offices that monitor the procurement processes initiated by government agencies, offices, departments nationwide. Tinitignan kung tama ang ginagawa. So there again, there is public monitoring of the procurement process and the implementation of awarded contracts with the end in view of guaranteeing that these contracts are awarded pursuant to the provisions of the law and its implementing rules. Now, like I said, competitiveness. This is one of the guiding principles of government procurement. And therefore, as a general rule, all procurement shall be done through what? Through competitive bidding. This is explicitly provided under Section 10 of the law. Competitive bidding here refers to a method of procurement which is open to participation by any interested party. You think you're qualified? You think you can deliver? Then by all means, compete. Now, of course, makikita din natin sa Section 5, sub-item E, makikita natin yung process. Of course, you need to advertise. Again, you need to advertise the project. You need to post it so that everyone can see. And then pre-bid, eligibility screening of prospective bidders, which in practice, pwedeng doon na rin sa pre-bid yan. You address the questions of the bidders, titipain na ng Bids and Awards Committee kung, kung naiintindihan ba nitong mga prospective bidders kung ano yung pinapasok nilang project. You address any concerns, and then after that, receipt and opening of bids, bid evaluation, post-qual, and only after those things are done, award of contract. Now, may reference dun sa bidding documents, no? What are the bidding documents? Bidding documents refers to documents issued by the procuring entity as the basis for bids. So ito, nakapost to online, either that or pwedeng bilhin ng mga interested bidders from the government agency or office concerned, kung hard copy ang gusto nila. All of the information they need para sa kanilang bid, no? In order for them to be able to bid competitively, nandoon yun lahat sa bid documents, sa bidding documents. Or in short, yung tinatawag namin na bid docs. Nasa bid docs ang kasagutan. If there is anything that is unclear, if there's anything na hindi mo natanong sa pre-bid conference, you take a look, you read the bid docs. Chances are that the answers you're looking for are all there. Now, kung maaalala ninyo, there was a remark made in one of the public conferences, yung laging handa conference, I think. There's this one schedule na merong ni-remark si outgoing President Duterte na along the lines of, bakit ganon sa government procurement? Bakit lowest bidder ang hinahanap? Bakit lowest bidder ang ipinapanalo sa bid opening? Na hindi ba dapat highest bidder? Na sinasabi niya, perhaps he was joking, sinasabi niya na, I am calling on the appropriate agencies, not his words, I'm just rephrasing, na I am calling on the government agencies concerned, take a look at our procurement law. And then perhaps baguhin natin from the lowest bidder to the highest bidder. Why am I saying that the president might be joking? You know, because there is an underlying logic behind the requirement na dapat lowest bidder. You see, hindi naman ito parang subastahan, no? Conducted by private persons, private groups, and entities na ang hinahanap nila highest bidder. Kasi sila yung pagbibilhan. Ikaw yung nagbebenta, basically, you want the thing that you're bidding out to fetch the highest price possible. But in government procurement, it is the government which buys. Ang gobyerno ang maglalabas ng pera. So basically, what the government says is that ito ang budget for the contract. The approved budget for the contract is, let's say, 5 million pesos. Lowest bidder yung hinahanap, pababaan ng bid ang mga prospective bidder. Dahil ang gobyerno gustong makatipid. The government wants the highest value, the highest return for the lowest price. And that is not without good reason, my friends. Mahalaga na makatipid ang gobyerno dahil hindi naman pera ng pribadong individual o ng kung sinong politiko yung nakasaalang-alang dito sa project. Again, we are going back once more to the state policy fueling our procurement law. Government procurement is a good governance initiative. Precisely because pera ng bayan ang ipinambabayad sa anumang procurement project. And therefore, it has to be the lowest bidder who must win. Pababaan. Kailangan makatipid ang government agencies. Kailangang ma-maximize ang pera ng taong bayan. All right? That is why, pursuant to Section 32 of RA 9184, for the procurement of goods and infrastructure projects, pababaan ng bid. And the bid with the lowest calculated price is the one that shall be referred as the lowest calculated bid, or LCB. Now, for consultancy services, according to Section 33 of the law, iba naman to. Hindi lang siya per se pababaan ng bid. Because when we talk about consulting services, pag consultancy ang pinag-uusapan natin, there is a ranking system in play. You have to check if this prospective consultant meets all of the requirements na nandoon sa rating system. So all of these prospective consultants, they will be ranked. They will be evaluated. Are they competent? Are they armed with the technical knowledge that we need for the lowest price? So experience, performance, quality of personnel, magagaling ba itong mga speaker nitong consultant na to? Mga aral ba sa ibang bansa? Or do they have the wealth of experience that we need? Of course, yun nga, price, no? Always comes into play kasi nga, good governance initiative, pera ng taong bayan ang ipinangbabayad sa kanila. Now, the winning bidder for the bidding of consulting services, ang tawag naman dyan ay highest rated bid. Not because highest kasi mataas ang kanilang asking price. No, highest rating. So doon sa ranking system, doon sa rating system, they have all of the green flags, so to speak. So lahat ng kinakailangan, check. Nando doon lahat. So I hope that is clear. And I hope I have disabused any notion in your minds as to the logic behind bakit lowest bid ang hinihingi ng batas for government procurement. I hope all of you understand. Now, sinabi natin, di ba, tapos na ang opening of bids, nakita na natin kung sino ang lowest calculated bid o sa highest rated bid. We have already made that determination. Now, after that, like we said earlier, hindi siya ipoproclaim kaagad. Hindi siya aawardan kaagad ng kontrata. No, hindi pa doon matatapos. There has to be some kind of vetting. Let us verify if this lowest calculated bid or if this highest rated bid really is qualified. Diyan papasok ang post-qualification, which is the stage where the bidder with the lowest calculated bid or the highest rated bid undergoes verification and validation, whether he has passed all the requirements and conditions as specified in the bid docs. This is provided under Section 34 of the law. Now, if the bidder with the LCB or highest rated bid passes all of the criteria, his bid shall be considered the lowest calculated responsive bid. Responsive kasi nakita na lahat ng kanyang mga ipinasa, yung kanyang qualifications, lahat ng kanyang mga dokumento, responsive dun sa pangangailangan ng ahensya for this given project. Or, in the case of consulting services, highest rated responsive bid. All right? And it is only to this bidder with the lowest calculated responsive bid or the highest rated responsive bid, sa kanya lang i-award yung kontrata. All right? I hope that's all clear. That, ladies and gentlemen, is government procurement in a nutshell.